Hi everyone, thanks for asking me to talk about web accessibility today. As I mentioned before, I work for Media Access Australia. Media Access Australia is actually Australia's only independent not-for-profit that works to... Mike's not on? Better? No? Hello? Damn. I'm a hater of microphones, so I'm just going to have to ignore that. I was just mentioning that I work for Media Access Australia, and Media Access Australia is Australia's only independent not-for-profit that works to increase access to media for people with disabilities. So in addition to my own area, which is accessibility both to the web and also the technology that allows people to access a computer, we also work in TV, DVD, cinema and the arts, and also education as well. So what we do is we work with government, industry, consumer bodies and consumers in order to essentially be a catalyst for increasing access. We are not a consultancy, so we don't, for instance, do accessibility audits or that. We tend to pitch at a little bit higher level of sort of instigating a bit more global change. I'll get used to my slides. You know, what really came out for me in listening to Frankie talk about user experience and usability is that she spoke about the audience. And to a greater or lesser extent, web accessibility is about making websites accessible to people with disabilities. And that includes a whole range of disabilities, including vision, hearing, mobility, and also cognition. But what I like to think about in accessibility is that it is also about your own personal preference and how you may want to actually access information. So for someone with a vision impairment, they might have low vision, they might be completely blind, or they might be colourblind. But it might be that you're driving your car and you need eyes-free access, say through your iPhone, and so you want to actually access the information in the same way as a person who is blind does. The same with hearing impairments. Deaf and hearing impairment tend to be the two main I think things we identify with hearing impairment, but it could be that you're in a noisy place and therefore you need to turn captions on in order to understand what someone's saying in a video, or you're at work and you don't want to disturb the people around you if you don't have headphones, or even maybe you're up at 2 AM trying to nurse a baby to sleep and you need something to, distract or entertain yourself, and so you turn on the television but you turn on the captions. So there's a whole lot of different uses for accessibility, and I think it's why we need to get out of the mindset that it's only about people with disabilities and start broadening that so that it's not just something that's niche, it's something that we consider much the same as we do consider usability and user experience. So there are always a number of business cases for accessibility, and the easy one to say is it's a basic human right. Recently, a Canadian citizen actually took the Canadian government to court because she couldn't fill out a census, she couldn't apply for a job online within the government sector, and she just basically couldn't access information that you and I probably just expect to be able to go to a website and access. And she actually had some success with that case in a favourable ruling from the courts. Other reasons are there's to also support social inclusion. A lot of people with a disability find that being able to access information online actually provides a lot more level playing field, and this includes social media as well. So when you're on the other end of a computer, people don't see your disability when you're using social media. However, not all the social media sites like Twitter, Facebook and so on, they have different levels of accessibility. But there's also other reasons. One is that you're actually increasing your audience reach. So at the moment, if you're not considering accessibility when building your site, or if you own a site, you're essentially excluding a portion of the market who may actually want to come to your website to even purchase products. So online shopping, for instance, might be a lot more viable alternative for a person with a disability. But if the website's not accessible, and generally a lot of online websites aren't accessible, then you're essentially excluding that market. It also increases the usability for all. So we've just heard about usability and how it is that that it helps you to discover and find information. Accessibility actually does increase the usability for all people, not just people with disabilities. It also ends up in better search results. So some of the principles that you use in accessibility, such as, for instance, using headings appropriately and for link text actually having meaningful link text on a link, actually increases your SEO. And also, particularly for some of the larger organisations that are in the public eye, it can result in positive or negative press. I was at a meeting recently where one of the major banks had actually released a mobile app, and in the update some of their labels on their buttons had fallen off, and so someone got out and someone complained, and I tell you what, they were paying attention. A lot of the time, particularly with social media, it's very easy to sort of kick up a storm and get some negative press through that. And of course, you can go through and file grievances, at least through the Disability Discrimination Act. So currently, the Australian landscape is broken up into government websites and non-government websites. Last year, the Australian government actually endorsed WCAG 2. WCAG stands for the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. They're the recognised international standard for web content produced by the W3C, or the World Wide Web Consortium. So the government has released a web accessibility national transition strategy that says that all federal, state and territory websites must be WCAG 2 Level A compliant by 2012, and that federal websites must be AA compliant by 2014. Within WCAG there's actually 3 levels, A, AA and AAA. For non-government websites, we look to the DDA, and the Disability Discrimination Act, and in particular their web advisory notes. So after the government endorsed WCAG 2 and released the National Transition Strategy, the Human Rights Commission actually updated their advisory notes as well in order to endorse WCAG 2 for non-government websites. So if you're dealing with government or looking to produce websites for government, you will need the credentials to say that you can develop accessible websites. And for non-government websites, I guess it's a little less proactive at the moment, but there are certainly still channels people can go through should a website be inaccessible. So I'd like to go through the components of web accessibility. There are actually 3 separate components to web accessibility, the first of which is the content. So any of the information that you're putting up on your website, this includes your mobile apps as well. It actually also extends to apps within mobile environments like iOS and Android. And also rich internet applications, so things like Google Documents as applications move into the cloud